I recently released several videos analyzing Xi Jinping's market rescue policies. Currently, it appears that the Chairman Xi's approach revolves around increasing the fiscal deficit and adopting loose monetary policies to stimulate production. However, the exact scale of this stimulus is still uncertain, with estimates suggesting it should exceed 2 trillion, while some speculate it could reach as high as 10 trillion. In my opinion, this policy is unlikely to be effective and won't reverse the downward trend of the Chinese economy. Since Xi Jinping assumed power, he has essentially failed in all his endeavors, making it even more unlikely that he can save the economy. While it may be ineffective, many are worried that Xi Jinping's erratic measures could lead to additional negative consequences. When they hear about massive amounts of money being injected, like 2 trillion or even 10 trillion, they become concerned that this kind of excessive monetary expansion might trigger significant inflation. Hi, I'm Dongshan. Welcome to Dig Into China, where we take a deeper look at China to reveal insights you can rarely find anywhere else. In this episode, I will explore the effects of Xi Jinping's current market rescue policies and examine the possibility of a significant inflation emerging as a result. Will Xi Jinping's latest stimulus policies have negative consequences? I believe they will, but rather than causing significant inflation, I think they will lead to major deflation. Some might find it puzzling that such monetary expansion could result in deflation. This happens because Xi Jinping's approach to liquidity injection differs from that of Europe and the US. It's a distinct method of monetary expansion unique to Xi. So what makes it different? Let's start by looking at how Europe and the US have implemented monetary expansion. During the recent pandemic, both regions engaged in substantial liquidity injection, which ultimately led to high inflation. In the US, for instance, the primary approach to this monetary expansion involved lowering interest rates. Borrowing rates effectively reached zero during the pandemic, allowing individuals and businesses to obtain loans without any cost. Additionally, this included direct cash payments and the suspension of student loan repayments, among other measures. Overall, the aim was to provide direct financial assistance to individuals and businesses or enable them to borrow money at incredibly low rates. However, China's approach to monetary expansion is distinct. Xi's method has never aimed at the general populace. Instead, it focuses on bolstering the manufacturing sector. The funds allocated under Xi's policies are solely intended to subsidize production. These subsidies come in various forms, such as supporting business loans, providing policy incentives, or implementing direct point-to-point purchasing subsidies. I won't delve into the specific subsidy methods in detail. However, if we examine the results of Xi Jinping's monetary expansion over the past year, one key data point stands out: the recent increase in China's fixed asset investment. Logically, in light of the current economic downturn, we would expect corporate investment in production to slow down. Yet, contrary to this expectation, the results under Xi's liquidity injection policies have been completely opposite. Firstly, since the start of 2024, fixed asset investment in China's manufacturing sector has consistently grown by more than 9%. In key industries, the mining sector has experienced growth rates exceeding 15%, while the computer and electronics manufacturing sectors have maintained growth above 14%. So, what do these substantial fixed asset investment ultimately lead to? They translate into increased production capacity. This is a hallmark of Xi's approach to monetary expansion. If we overlook the various processes involved, it becomes clear that each time Xi injects liquidity, he is not just releasing money, but is effectively enabling the production of goods. This viewpoint is primarily influenced by Xi Jinping's personal ideology. He does not acknowledge the value of consumption. Instead, he emphasizes the importance of production. In his eyes, consumption and welfare ultimately foster dependency, while only production is seen as the way forward. This model of liquidity injection not only fails to create inflation, but could also lead to deflation. The reason for this lies in how much monetary expansion can upset the supply-demand balance. The rise in fixed asset investment corresponds to an increase in production capacity, which ultimately results in a surplus of products released. This surplus significantly surpasses the market demand. While fixed asset investment in China has grown by 9%, 14%, and 15%, consumption growth is less than 3%. This gap has resulted in a surplus of products that far exceeds demand, affecting both domestic and international markets. In light of this situation, what options do companies have? On one hand, they are under pressure from the Communist Party to maintain production levels. On the other, they are faced with a lackluster market. In this context, their only viable strategy for self-preservation is to engage in price wars and aggressive discounting. For example, the electric vehicle industry, which Xi Jinping is keen on, has recently seen significant price reductions, with the BYD as a notable case. In a normal supply-demand environment, the BYD's vehicle prices steadily rose. Between 2014 and 2022, the average price per vehicle increased from 80,000 yuan to 150,000 yuan. However, due to the distorted supply-demand dynamics, BYD has had to lower its vehicle prices. In the first 7 months of 2024, the price per vehicle fell to 130,000 yuan. Additionally, Xi Jinping's other new focus, the photovoltaic industry, has been even more affected, grappling with severe overcapacity and causing prices across the entire solar energy supply chain to plummet. This aggressive discounting strategy isn't confined to the domestic market. It is also evident in China's exports, which emphasizes quantity over price. Since 2022, the volume of exported products has increased sharply, while prices have seen a steep decline. This dependence on lowering prices to address inadequate demand has become the only survival strategy for Chinese companies operating under Xi's liquidity injection policies. Consequently, this has led to a clear state of deflation in China. It's essential to clarify the definitions of inflation and deflation. Generally, inflation isn't merely defined by a consumer price index above zero, nor is deflation simply a CPI below zero. In modern economic theory, a CPI increase of around 2% is considered the ideal condition for an economy. Therefore, a CPI rise above 2% is typically regarded as inflation, while a CPI below 2% is seen as deflation. Regarding China's CPI, it has been stuck in a stagnant state, fluctuating around 0%. Meanwhile, the PPI has seen even steeper declines, frequently falling below negative 2%. This is largely due to Xi Jinping's focus on channeling the majority of investments into the manufacturing sector. It's important to acknowledge that many people may not clearly perceive the current price declines in China. For example, many Chinese individuals might argue that their everyday expenses haven't decreased. Dining out seems more expensive and the prices for fruits like tomatoes have surged. How can one claim that the prices are falling? Their perception is certainly valid. While Xi's liquidity injections might lead to widespread price reductions, not every industry experiences this trend. Significant price decline occur only in sectors that benefit from Xi's policies, where overcapacity results in substantial price drops. In contrast, industries that do not receive such support, like certain agricultural products, may not face overcapacity and could even see rising price. However, when considering various consumer expenditures such as electronics, real estate, and automobiles, it becomes clear that the overall price level is still declining. Xi Jinping's latest round of stimulus policies effectively amplifies the current issues facing China. Some media outlets have pointed out that he has made a complete 180-degree turn regarding his stance. It's true that Xi's perspective on the Chinese economy has shifted significantly. He once denied any problems, but he now acknowledges the economic challenges. However, his views on the direction of subsidies, the approach to stimulating the economy, and the methods to enhance China's economic performance have not changed. The array of stimulus policies he is currently planning appears to amplify his approach to liquidity injections. In China, although it may seem like Xi Jinping is releasing significant amounts, whether it's 2 trillion or even 10 trillion yuan, what he is actually injecting into the economy are products. As a result, the more liquidity Xi Jinping introduces, the lower prices are likely to drop, exacerbating the deflationary pressures. Some may argue that this situation appears beneficial. After all, lower prices can be a positive development, offering consumers better value. However, it's crucial to recognize that no matter how companies attempt to offset their losses, whether by exporting at the low prices or undercutting prices domestically, lower prices ultimately translates to reduced profits. Currently, the profit margin for private enterprises in China have hit a historical low. This has led to a cycle where increasing subsidies and ongoing liquidity injections drive companies to ramp up production and create excess inventory. As a result, with an oversupply of products, these companies are compelled to sell at reduced prices, causing a significant decline in their profits. Declining profits can't fall solely on business owners. Companies will inevitably reduce employee wages to cope. Deflation doesn't just mean lower product prices. It also leads to falling incomes, often at a rate that outpaces the drop in prices. Thus, in turn, create a cycle. As income fall, consumer spending is bound to decrease as well. For people in China right now, the more intense the stimulus policies Xi Jinping implements, the more this cycle will intensify. Essentially, the stronger the stimulus, the more income will drop and the lower product prices will go. It's worth noting that price drops won't occur across all sectors. Only industries prioritized by Xi Jinping are likely to see reduced prices. Other items like agricultural products or dining out are unlikely to become cheaper. At the same time, as income fall, these everyday goods will feel increasingly expensive. Moreover, the significant price reductions mainly apply to domestically produced goods, while imported products are expected to become more expensive. This is because foreign companies don't receive similar subsidies, so large-scale price cuts are unlikely. Additionally, although Xi-style monetary easing may not directly push domestic prices up, measures like lowering interest rates are likely to devalue the yuan. With the yuan's depreciation and declining incomes, imported goods will inevitably feel increasingly costly. These issues were expected to surface as early as 2023, considering the yuan's depreciation and China's ongoing deflationary pressure. Yet, due to the unique conditions of the Chinese market, the full effects haven't been felt. Take the iPhone, for example. Logically, with the yuan's devaluation, its price should have increased. In 2022, the iPhone 14 128GB sold for 6,000 yuan when the yuan to dollar exchange rate was around 6.3. Now, with the rate closer to 7.1, the yuan has depreciated by about 10%. Now, with the rate closer to 7.1, the yuan has depreciated by about 10%. Under the normal circumstances, Apple's new models would have seen a similar price hike. However, Apple has kept the prices stable, making China one of the cheapest iPhone markets globally. This pricing anomaly is due to Apple's strategic prioritization of China as its third largest market. Tim Cook, mindful of Apple's revenue and stock performance, is hesitant to risk its position here. Facing weaker consumer demand and the local competitors' price cuts, Apple has had to follow suit, lowering prices to remain competitive. Automobiles like BMW and Volkswagen are similarly compelled to slash their prices significantly to protect their market presence in China, which means the adverse effect of the yuan's depreciation haven't fully surfaced yet. However, for products that cannot easily adjust prices, such as luxury goods, the consequences are already apparent. For example, sales of LV products in China have seen a notable drop. It's uncertain when companies like BMW and Apple will come to the realization that the Chinese market lacks future prospects, prompting them to move away from competing on price with local businesses and eventually exit the market. When that happens, their revenues are likely to take a significant hit. For average consumers, this could mean a sudden realization that the foreign products have become prohibitively expensive, making them difficult to afford. The adverse effects of currency depreciation will only become evident at that time. The prediction above reflects the current state of China's short-term economic development, primarily based on Xi Jinping's recent economic policies. However, Xi has been somewhat unpredictable lately, often altering his policies. Even if he were to move away from his extensive monetary easing strategy, China still lacks substantial potential for significant inflation. Morgan Stanley has recently forecast 3 possible inflation scenarios based on the Chinese Communist Party's economic policies. 1. Xi Jinping continues to maintain his style of monetary easing. 2. Xi Jinping could choose to abandon his national framework and large-scale monetary easing, accepting a GDP growth rate of only 1% to 2%. Nevertheless, Morgan Stanley forecasts that even in this scenario, China will likely continue to experience mild deflation due to the existing overcapacity. And 3. Xi Jinping might decide to abandon his traditional approach and adopt a US-style monetary easing strategy, focusing on stimulating consumption to revitalize the economy. However, even in this scenario, the existing problems of overcapacity would still need to be resolved. Achieving a moderate inflation rate in the range of 2% to 3% would be considered a significant improvement, as it would signal that China has successfully emerged from the shadow of recession. None of the 3 scenarios corresponds to significant inflation. The reason for addressing this issue is that inflation and deflation demand different defensive strategies. In an inflationary context, the main concern is the severe devaluation of the currency. Thus, if high inflation arises, it's crucial to identify investment avenues that can protect against the devaluation by allocating funds to inflation-resistant assets, ensuring that the increase in cash holdings outstrips price rises. This constitutes the most effective strategy. In a deflationary scenario, our main worries become the potential decreases in wages and the threat of unexpected unemployment. Therefore, it is prudent to ensure liquidity, hold cash equivalents, and lower substantial debts such as long-term mortgage and auto loans. Moreover, deflation is marked by a decline in prices for goods that serve both investment and consumption purpose. A well-known example is real estate, which is frequently discussed. In addition to real estate, prices for automobile and luxury watches may also drop, making the sale of these assets a prudent decision during times of deflation. Thank you so much for watching. If you find this video helpful, please like it, drop a comment below, and hit the subscribe button right here. It really helps YouTube suggest my videos to others. I'll be back with more content soon. Until then, be well.